No matter how tough anyone acts, prison shakes you to the core. I was afraid. Everyone is, whether they admit it or not. But I had one advantage. I was a CYA baby. That's what they called us, guys raised in the youth authority system, primed for the penitentiary. We had already been hardened by its rules, conditioned to fall in line. We knew how to move, how to carry ourselves, how to fight when we had to, and more importantly, when not to. We understood that survival was about more than just brute strength. It was about playing the game. It didn't matter what gang you claimed or what color you wore. Every faction operated under the same rules: brainwashing, violence, power, control. And I was the perfect recruit. I didn't ask questions. I didn't hesitate. I followed orders. It seemed simple. The camaraderie was what drew men like me in. For those of us who had never known real family, the gang actually felt like one.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It promised loyalty, protection, a sense of belonging, but that feeling, that illusion of brotherhood was a lie. It was the most dangerous lie of all. To this day, I refuse to name the gang I was a part of. I won't give them that recognition. They don't deserve a place in my story. What I will say is that all gangs function the same way. They exist to consume you. They strip away your identity, your conscience, anything good still left inside you. At 18, I didn't see that. I thought I was in control, that I had made a choice. But I hadn't chosen anything. I had simply been chosen. That's what joining a prison gang really means. You give up any rights you once had over your own life. You belong to them. You follow their rules. You adopt their beliefs, and if you ever challenge them, if you so much as hesitate, you learn just how ruthless they are. I learned that firsthand. The deeper I got into the brutal arena of prison gang politics, they say you never see the road ahead until it's too late. That's the best way I can describe my life. I had imagined so many things differently for myself, but this, spending the rest of my life in prison, was never part of the plan. The first time they handed me a prison-made knife and told me to stab another inmate, I didn't stop to think about consequences. Much like in my childhood, my mindset was simple. Do what you have to do to survive. There was no moral dilemma, no weighing of right and wrong. I had been trained for this moment, shaped by a system that had taught me one thing above all else: violence is currency. It is respect, it is power, and if you don't use it, it will be used against you. Aggression and violence became my first responses to everything. I didn't question it. I didn't feel remorse. And that desensitization, that ability to harm without hesitation, is still something I still wrestle with today. It doesn't just disappear. It lingers. I regret it. It waits. Some nights it creeps back in, settling into my bones like muscle memory, and I'm ashamed. Even now, after everything, I can't say with certainty that it will ever leave me completely. I can't undo the things I've done, but I can't tell the truth about them. And that truth still haunts me. By 1993, I was on parole, but I wasn't free. If anything, I was more entrenched in a gang lifestyle than ever. My crimes weren't just about survival anymore. I was a soldier. I carried out orders across California, committing acts of violence for men still locked inside prison walls. There was no illusion of choice. I had given them my loyalty, and in return, they owned me. I tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. I worked a roofing job during the day, but at night I was still in the light. It was an impossible balancing act, and deep down, I knew it couldn't last. More than once, I thought about just walking away, but I knew what that meant. I could either disappear and live in fear for the rest of my life, always looking over my shoulder, or I could accept the inevitable, prison or death. I wasn't strong enough to leave. I told myself it was because I had no choice, but the truth is, I was afraid of what would happen if I stayed, but even more afraid of what would happen if I tried to break free. People say you can feel it when your world is closing in on you. I understand that now. Even then, I knew my time was running out, whether it was the police, the gang, or the violent lifestyle itself. Something was going to catch up to me. Crimes weighed heavier each time. Guilt, and something I hadn't felt in years began creeping in me. I regretted pledging my loyalty to a group of broken men who were just as lost as I was. But by then, there was nowhere to go except down, and I was spiraling fast. Chapter 3, Into the World Without Me. He called me that night in April of 1993, just after sundown. I had barely made it through the front door, exhausted from a long day of roofing in the Central Valley heat. My body ached, my hands were raw, and all I wanted was a shower and some food before collapsing into bed. I was living with my girlfriend at the time, Lana Marie, and her mother, who had taken me in despite knowing my past. They understood the weight I carried, the gang, the fights, the chaos. I had been trying to leave behind, but they believed in me anyway. When I picked up the phone, my mother's voice came through, shaken and raw. She was calling me from a payphone in town, which told me she had fled the house in a hurry. Her boyfriend had come home drunk from the bar, but this time it had gone further. I would learn the full truth later. Now, before passing out, he had forced her to perform oral sex on him. Why don't you just leave him, I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mother never left. She had spent a lifetime normalizing pain, believing if she stayed long enough, things would change. She had done it with my stepfather. She was doing it again now. Then she said the words that made my heart stop. Will you go out there and do something to him before he ends up killing me first? The room seemed to shrink around me. My grip on the phone tightened. I must have turned pale because later on, Lana Marie and her mother told me they could see the color drain from my face. Are you serious, Mom? I asked, but I knew she was. Less than an hour later, I stood outside waiting for her to pick me up. When she pulled up under the dim glow of the streetlight, I opened the truck door, ready to step into something I could never undo. Lana Marie refused to let me go alone. I begged her to stay behind, told her she didn't need to be involved, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. I would regret that more than anything else in my life. The truck rumbled over the dirt road, headlights cutting through the darkness. My mother laid out the plan like she had already gone over it 100 times in her mind, like she had been waiting for this moment. She was willing to use me, her son, her baby boy, to free herself from yet another man she had chosen. The thought made me sick, but I sat there silent, knowing I had already made my decision. When we arrived, the house was quiet except for the steady sound of his drunken snores. The air inside felt thick, suffocating, like the walls were pressing in. My mother handed me the gun. My hands shook. My stomach twisted. I had never felt so cold in my life. It took seconds, 2 rounds. He never saw it coming. As soon as it was done, I bolted out of the bedroom, stumbled into the yard, and dropped to my knees, vomiting into the grass. Lana Marie stood frozen near the truck. Her face burned into my memory even now. Was that gunshots? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I grabbed her hand. Yeah, come on. We climbed into the truck. My brother drove. No one spoke. I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look at her, refusing to think about what had just happened. What kind of mother asks her son to do something like this, and what kind of son actually does it? Less than 2 weeks later, we were both arrested for murder. From the start, investigators saw through the story. It wasn't a simple break-in gone wrong. The victim's family knew it. The detectives knew it. They pieced it together fast. But what shocked them most was the truth. It was me who pulled the trigger. For years, people asked the same question. What kind of mother asked her son to commit murder? I still don't have an answer. While I sat in the county jail waiting for trial, the world outside kept moving without me. A year after my arrest, the only person who had stood by me, Lana Marie, was gone. She had been drag racing on a country road when the car flipped over. The impact shattered nearly every bone in her body. The brain damage was irreversible. It kept her alive long enough to donate her organs. The sheriff's department hesitated before breaking the news to me. By then, I had already earned a reputation inside. I was a violent, angry, spiraling out of control. Her mother wanted me to know before they pulled the plug. I had urged Lana Marie to testify against me, told her to do whatever she had to do, but now she was dead, and I hated myself even more. I spent years buried in the gang life, locked away in a 15 by 15 cell, treated like something dangerous that needed to be contained, and maybe I was. I was bitter, I was lost. I let prison politics define me, let the gang decide my worth. I became the man people feared.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
But the truth was, I had sacrificed everything for something that never truly cared about me. Rock bottom wasn't a moment, it was a slow descent. And when the gang finally decided I was expendable, I saw the truth. I had given them everything, and still, they would have me killed without hesitation. Walking away was the hardest thing I had ever done. It came with more violence, more blood, another fight for survival, but I survived. And for the first time, I realized how much I wanted to. A month later, I sat in a room with federal agents, the same ones who had spent years building cases against men like me. I had resisted them before, but this time I listened. I spent the next 3 years in Pelican Bay Security Housing Unit, going through the debriefing process. It was my chance to start over, but it wasn't that simple. The past doesn't let go that easily. I thought that once I walked away, I could erase who I had been, but I was wrong. My reputation followed me. My crimes defined me. For years, I had no idea who I was outside of the game. Looking back now, I understand why it had to be so hard. Anything worth having, anything real, is never easy to get. When you hit rock bottom, really hit it, you start to see the only way forward is to confront the past. You have to face your demons, unravel the trauma, and figure out exactly what brought you to the place you're in. For me, incarceration had been my entire existence. Even when I was physically free, I was never really free. My childhood set the stage for a life of emotional turmoil, and as an adult, I acted out in ways I barely understood. I had to grow in ways I never had before. I had to start looking at the insecurities buried deep inside me, the ones I had spent a lifetime avoiding. I had to write them down, speak them out loud, and worst of all, feel them. At first, it was unbearable. The deeper I dug, the heavier the burden became. I felt like an even bigger failure than I had already believed myself to be. But over time, I began to see the necessity of that pain. That feeling of failure wasn't weakness. It was remorse. It was conscience. And that is something every man in prison needs if he ever hopes to find his way back to redemption. The first time I spoke about my past, something shifted. The more I committed myself to change, the more I saw myself for who I really was. Not just a product of my past, but someone capable of rewriting his future. I spent my life believing I was only good for destruction. Now, I was starting to believe in something else. For the first time, I was on the right track. Chapter 5. When chains don't break. Years had passed since I hit rock bottom, and every single one of them had spent clawing my way back, trying to rebuild myself into someone I could live with. I had walked away from the life that nearly destroyed me. Believing didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean the path stopped breathing down my neck. I was housed at a prison in California known for its non-program and high-violence yards, a place where men still tangled in the same game politics I had fought to escape. Every day, I walked through a battlefield where alliances could shift in an instant, where a wrong look or an old grudge could turn deadly. I learned to navigate that world with a quiet but firm presence. My past reputation still carried weight. And though I no longer played the gang's rules, people knew me better than to test me. I treated everyone with respect, regardless of race, regardless of background, but I also expected that same respect.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
I had carved out a place for myself in the education building, something I never could have imagined back when I first got locked up. I was halfway through my college program, just a few credits shy of earning my associate's degree. The more I learned, the more I saw what was possible. When I was offered a job tutoring other inmates preparing their GEDs, I took it without hesitation. That word gave me something I hadn't felt in years, purpose. I watched men who had been written off by the world sit down with books they had once been too ashamed to even open. I saw their faces change when they realized they weren't stupid, that they could learn, that they could be something more than a Department of Corrections number. Okay. Eventually, my instructor, a man who had more faith in me than I had in myself, let me run the classroom. His confidence in me changed everything. It pushed me to start a creative writing class, a place where guys could sharpen their skills, tell their stories, put words to pain they had never spoken out loud. Watching them excel in an environment that was still drenched in violence, still controlled by men who believed change was weakness, gave me hope. It showed me that transformation was possible, even in the most impossible places. Then one day, everything shifted. I had just finished work in the education building when I called my brother Dwayne. I didn't call home as often as I should, but I made it a point to write, to let them know I was still pushing forward, still trying to be a man they could be proud of. That day, though, as soon as Dwayne spoke, I knew something was different. Mom went to board, he said, his voice flat. They granted her parole. I froze. At first, I thought he was joking, but Dwayne didn't joke about things like this. I waited for him to say more, to explain, to tell me something that would make this fit right, if there was nothing else to say. I'm happy for her, I finally said, though the words fell foreign in my own mouth. But was I? Even now, I don't know how to answer that. The moment I hung up, it felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. I'd come so far, clawing my way out of darkness, rebuilding myself from nothing, and now I had to watch her walk free after she cost me my own freedom. I told myself I could handle it, that I was strong enough to accept it, that I would be happy for the sake of my brother, for his two sons who would finally get to know their grandmother. But in reality, I was unraveling. I quit my college classes, transferred out of the education department, took a job in the kitchen, scrubbing trays in the back while I didn't have to talk to anyone. I stopped writing home as often, stopped answering letters, pulled away from everything that had been keeping me afloat. For months, I let myself sink. I convinced myself I was okay, that I was just going through something temporary, that I was handling it, but every time I called home, I put on a front, smoothed my voice out so Dwayne wouldn't hear the weight I was carrying. Eventually, I couldn't fake it anymore. I wrote him a letter, put everything in it, the resentment, the confusion, the feeling of being left behind while she walked free. It was the hardest letter I had ever written. When I finally called him, he was crying. "It's not fair," he said. "I feel guilty, too." And in that moment, I realized I wasn't the only one hurting. I had been so caught up in my own emotions that I hadn't stopped to think about what it meant for him. He had carried the weight of our family for years. He had held everything together while I was locked up, while our mother was behind bars, while the world kept moving forward without us. He had felt the guilt of being free, of being the one who got to raise his kids, of being the one who didn't have to wake up in a cell every morning. Yes, she had her freedom, but was she really free? No, not like me, not mentally, not spiritually. She would walk out into a world she didn't understand, with decades of institutional thinking still pressing down on her, with the past still wrapped around her like chains. That letter saved me. It reminded me that giving up was the easy way out, and I had already done that too many times in my life. I refused to do it.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I went back to the education building, re-enrolled in my classes, asked for my job back. I walked back into that classroom and stood in front of those same men who had once looked to me for guidance, knowing I had let myself fall, knowing how I had to earn my place again. I refused to let my mother's freedom destroy my own. Buried, not broken. I've always heard men in here talk about freedom, that is, what it would feel like to walk out of these prison gates and be alive again. Some compare it to breathing fresh air after being suffocated for decades. Others say it means hugging their children, sitting with their families, or reclaiming the pieces of life they had once lost. I've also heard men say they don't want to grow old and die in prison, buried beneath the weight of a life sentence. I understand that feeling more than I care to admit. According to the laws that sentenced me in 1994, I'm expected to never leave this place, but people tell me all the time that I will experience life outside of these walls one day. They tell me I deserve it because of the changes they see in me. Will I ever be out there again with my wife and my daughters, the people who encourage me every single day to keep fighting to be a better man? I hope so. But even if that day never comes, I have something that many free men don't. I have internal freedom. No one can take that from me. Not time, not circumstances, not even the past that once ruled my own life. I wish I could say I woke up one morning and had some grand epiphany about how to change my life, but it wasn't that simple. The truth is, I wanted to change long before I had even the strength to do so. The problem was I just didn't know how. I had no plan, no guide, no clear path forward. I spent years believing, like many others, that freedom was something physical, that it meant stepping outside untouched by prison gates. When I had to unlearn that, I had to revisit my past and face the hard truth. Freedom is just a perspective. I know plenty of men who live outside of these walls and are still trapped, chained to addiction, cycles of violence, or the weight of their own self-hatred. Real freedom isn't just about where you are, it's about who you are. And I didn't fully understand that until the day I met Delta. I had been at this prison for nearly 2 years when the New Life Canine Service Dog program was introduced. I had already been housed in the Honor Building because of my positive programming on the yard, but I wanted more. I wanted something beyond self-help groups and personal growth. I wanted something bigger than just myself. So when I heard about the opportunity to raise a service dog, I jumped at the chance. The morning of my interview, I was given a chance to pet a dog for the first time in 28 years. I can't explain what that felt like. The moment my fingers ran through that fur, something inside me shifted. I'd spent so many years hardened, numb, convinced I had no softness left. When in that instant, I felt something I hadn't in decades, peace. Still, I feared they would hold my past against me. Would they trust a man with my history to care for a living, breathing creature? Would they see me as more than just a number, more than just my past crimes? I would soon learn that New Life Canines wasn't just about training service dogs for veterans and first responders with post-traumatic stress disorder. It was about healing the men inside these walls. It was about second chances, and I was ready for mine. I was the first inmate at this facility to be interviewed for the program. I had no idea what it would entail, but I was prepared to give it my all, just like I had with everything else in my journey toward redemption. When I found out that I would be assigned a puppy to raise and train for the next 2 years, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood, excitement. The thought of caring for a life other than my own, of shaping a future service dog who would one day change someone's world, filled me with purpose. I spent weeks studying and preparing, but nothing could have prepared me for the moment I first held Delta. He was an 8-week-old yellow Labrador retriever, and the moment I cradled him in my arms, I knew. I don't know if it was destiny, divine purpose, or just sheer luck, but I knew he was mine. The facility captain named him Delta after Facility D, the yard where we were housed. But in time, Delta became so much more than just a name. He became the heart of the program. He became my heart. I have only cried a handful of times in my life since being incarcerated. I cried when they told me Lana Marie was being taken off life support. I cried when I spoke to my mother on Easter Sunday, knowing she had been given her freedom while I was left behind. I cried the first time I sat in a room full of broken men speaking about my past, but I never expected to cry over a dog. That first night, when my cell door shut and it was just Delta and me, I held him in my arms and felt tears rolling down my face. I looked at the wall in my cell, covered in the photographs of people I love, my wife, my daughters, my brother. For years, those faces have been my only source of comfort, my only reminder of what love felt like. But that night, as Delta lay curled against me, I felt something different. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just existing, I was alive. Delta slept in my arms that night, nestled against me as if I was his protector. And maybe I was. But in truth, he was protecting me. He was giving me something I had never truly known, unconditional love. I watched him, this tiny, confident puppy, explore the world without fear. And I thought about myself as a child, the way I had once been so full of potential before life stole that innocence away from me. The difference was Delta had me, and I vowed to be for him what no one had ever been for me. Raising a service dog inside a prison isn't easy. It requires patience, discipline, and the ability to put another being's needs above your own. For decades, I had looked out for no one but myself, but now I had Delta. I woke up in the middle of the night to take him outside. I watched for signs of anxiety or stress, ensuring he was always felt safe. I dedicated every moment to his well-being. I was no longer just a prisoner. I was a caretaker, a teacher, a protector. The New Life Canines follows something called the bomb-based approach. It's different from traditional training, which relies on commands, rewards, and punishment. With the bond-based method, dogs choose to do what is asked of them, not out of fear or obligation, but out of love and trust. The idea is simple. A dog will do more for you when they feel safe, loved, and connected. And that philosophy extends beyond dogs. Isn't that what we all want? To feel safe, to feel loved, to feel like we matter as humans? I realized how deeply this bond affected me when Delta started responding to my emotions. I still struggle with depression and anxiety. For years, I buried my pain, refusing to acknowledge it. But when my mother was released from prison, I finally sought help. I enrolled in the Department of Corrections mental health program, facing the emotions I had run from for so long. Delta sensed my pain. He wouldn't let me lie in bed, drowning in my thoughts. Instead, he would nuzzle up next to me, lay his head on my chest, and lick my face, pulling me out of my darkness. Without words, he told me, "I'm here. You are not alone." I never expected to learn so much from a dog, but Delta has taught me more about love, patience, and redemption than I ever thought possible. For years, I felt like a failure, like I could never atone for my past. But every time I look at Delta, I see proof that change is real. I see proof that love is real. I see hope, and that is my freedom. My role in the New Life Canines program is more than just being Delta's handler. I don't wish to set myself apart from the men in the group, my team, and my family, but I have taken on responsibility to go beyond training the dog. I've always considered myself a leader in some way. Maybe it was because I never liked taking orders from others, or maybe it was because I grew up in a world where influence mattered. But through this journey, I've learned that being a leader isn't about control or reputation, It's about being of service. When I walked into this program, I carried a past reputation in the prison system, one of influence, as they say. I understand now.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
But what I failed to realize back then was that leadership isn't about who you are. It's about who you choose to be today. It's about stepping up when others are lost, about showing people that they don't need to follow you. They need to follow the goodness that already exists within themselves. I am no better than any man in this program. The only difference is I have already walked the path that many of them are just now discovering. And so I do everything I can as a mentor, not because I believe I am above them, but because I see them, their potential, their strength, and their worth. Just as others, for the first time in my life, have finally been willing to see those things in me. Every morning when I wake up in prison, it is no longer about the crimes that put me here. It's not about the years I've lost or the sentence that looms over me. Each day is an opportunity. I cannot change my past, but I can control what I do with it today. No one can take that from me. Not my past, not my mistakes, not the system itself. I know deep in my soul that I will never revert back to the man I used to be. If I didn't believe that with every fiber of my being, I wouldn't be standing here today, living proof of my own transformation. I have faced many demons. I have put in the work, and if you were to ask anyone who knew me all those years ago, they would tell you that the man standing before them today is someone they never saw coming. That is something I'm very proud of. One of the things I tell the men in the self-help groups I attend and facilitate is this. No one is born into this world to become the tragedies they later become. Circumstances shape us, yes, but they do not have to define us. I do not claim to be more righteous than the next man. I do not push one religion over another, but I do believe that we are all created for something. And while we may take the long road, while we may stumble, fall, and get lost along the way, I believe that many of us will find our way back. For some, it takes a lifetime. For others, it happens in their final moments when they are forced to look back and face what they have done, who they have been, and who they could have been instead. I used to believe that I would be one of those men, growing old in prison, dying behind these walls with nothing but regret. But I refuse to let that be my story. I want to leave.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
I want my existence to mean something, and I think in the end, that is all anyone truly wants. I have suffered a great deal in my life. Because of that suffering, I feel a calling to help the youth who are struggling with the same things I once did. Whether it's abuse, neglect, or just the lack of self-worth that so many people feel, I know firsthand how much it means when anyone takes the time to listen. And I never had that. But I can be that for someone else. And the first time I sat across from a young boy who had lost his mother to suicide, I didn't know what to say. What do you say to a child whose life has been shattered before it has even begun? No words can take that kind of pain away, so I did the only thing I could do. I told him my own story. I told him the truth about my past, about my mistakes, about the pain I had carried for so long. I watched him listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart. And when I was done, there were tears in his eyes. For the first time, I saw that my suffering, my past, had purpose. It didn't make what I had done right, but it gave me the chance to do something right with the time I had left. If I could help change this one life before it was too late, maybe, just maybe, I could begin to make amends for the lives I destroyed. My work with Delta, my work with the youth outreach programs, my dedication to being a mentor to other men in this prison, these are the things that define me now. I once saw myself as a victim of a broken system, but the truth is, I had become part of the problem. I spent years blaming everyone but myself. Now I know better. It takes true leadership to stand in a room full of men and show them a different way. But leadership means nothing without humility. I've made mistakes in this journey. I have faltered, struggled, and wrestled with my own flaws, but I'm learning to forgive myself. Because without self-forgiveness, growth is impossible. So the following are letters that I had written personally to Delta during my journey with him in the program, as well as what we would do is we would keep a journal for his future recipients where Delta would be placed with, much like a documentation of his life. So this next section are letters that I had written to Delta specifically and to his future recipients. Letter number one is to Delta. Dear Delta, since you have come into my life, everything has started to fall into place. You may not understand why I have carried so much pain for so long, but somehow you are helping me heal in ways I never thought possible. The moment I held you in my arms, the shield I had carried for years, the one that kept the world at a distance, began to fall away. For the first time in my life, I let something in. You have been my responsibility since the moment you walked into these prison walls, and I promise you I will do everything in my power to make sure you experience the world with love, joy, and kindness. Today I watched you lie in the grass, staring up at the sky. You look so peaceful, so content. I wondered if you even realized where you were, or if as long as you were with me, none of that mattered. I stroked your fur and you gave me that silly grin you always do when you're happy. I sat there in that moment, and for the first time in a long time, I felt whole. You have no idea how much you mean to me, little cowboy. You are saving my life just as surely as you will save the life of the person who is waiting for you on the outside. With love, Dad. The next letter is to Delta's future recipient. I can only imagine the love the two of you will share when Delta becomes yours. If I could tell you one thing, it would be this. Delta will love you like no one ever has. He will heal you in ways you never thought possible. He has been my son, my confidant, my light in the darkness. Let him be that for you too. Take care of him, cherish him, and know that as much as you needed him, he needed you too. With gratitude, Keith. And here's another letter I wrote to Delta. Dear Delta, I thought about how far we've come today, how close we've become, and I don't think I ever realized the depth of trust a man can have with his...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
My biggest fear when you were just a small puppy stepping into the walls of this prison was that I would expect too much from you in an environment that wasn't normal. But as time went on and we built a relationship based on mutual love and shared need for each other, I began to understand something else. I needed you in my life more than you can ever know. I also realized that you, in your own way, needed every part of me. Their purpose, even before you were born, was bigger than either of us knew. Others must have seen it before I did, that bringing service dogs in prison wasn't just about saving lives on the outside. It was about saving lives within these walls as well. I walk with you at my side, and I often wonder what others see. Do they see what I feel in my own heart, that I have a greater purpose now? Do they understand that your duty as a service dog began the moment you were brought into this world? I don't know, my little cowboy. But what I do know is that I have been proud of you since the very beginning. I will never forget watching you strut across the day room full of confidence, even as a tiny puppy. The first time you wore your booties, stumbling like an awkward baby duckling, yet running toward me like an Olympian determined to cross the finish line. You leaped into my arms, and at that moment, I knew this was going to be something special. You have given me memories I will never forgive. Love, Dad. And here's another letter to Delta's future recipient. By now you know so much about me and my role in Delta's life. But when I first decided to document my story for you and for anyone whose life will be touched by these incredible dogs, I made a promise to be as honest and transparent as possible. Delta is not just any dog. He is special. He is an analytical, always observing, always thinking. When I ask him to do something, I can see the wheels turning in his head. He gives me this look, eager but cautious, as if to say, okay, now what exactly are you asking me to do and why? But as he's grown, I've noticed that he's becoming more confident, no longer overthinking every little thing. One of the most remarkable things about dogs like Delta is their ability to process and retain information overnight. We call it overnight learning. They take in everything from the day before, and while they sleep, they sort it all out like a puzzle coming together. When they wake up, they work through it in their minds, ready to apply what they've learned. I'll be honest, I didn't fully understand this in the beginning. I wanted results. I wanted Delta to be the best, but then I realized something. Dogs don't need to be pushed or pressured. Their success happens in its own time, and every small step is a victory. So when you welcome Delta into your life, I ask one thing. Be patient with him, as he has been patient with me. Encourage him in the small things as well as the big things. Let him know you have his back, because I promise you, he will always have yours.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Here's another letter to Delta's future recipients. Being part of this program has brought out the best in me, but more importantly, it has transformed the men around me. I have watched people change in ways I never thought possible. In here, we all work on bettering ourselves, but there's something different about this program. It exposes a side of us that we rarely let others see. One of my proudest moments was when we participated in Operation Gratitude in January of 2020. It was an event where inmates wrote letters and created artwork to be included in care packages for veterans and first responders. I wanted to do something special, not just for the handlers, but for Delta too. So I wrote a speech titled "My Name is Delta," telling our story from his perspective. Here is how it read. Hi, my name is Delta, and I am part of something that is changing lives all over the world. They call it New Life Canine Service Dog. When I was 8 weeks old, I came into a place they call prison. I had no idea what to expect, but it has actually been a pretty cool experience. People say prison is where criminals go, but from a dog's perspective, I see things differently. People make mistakes just like us dogs, and they learn from them. Isn't that what life is all about? Learning to be the best versions of ourselves. For the past year, I've been bonding with my handler, learning new things, and preparing for my future. One day I will graduate, and they say I will save someone's life. And do you know the best part? I have 8 brothers and sisters here who will graduate with me too. I'm not just a pet. I'm a service dog. I will help someone with PTSD, someone who feels like the world is closing in on them. I will be their lifeline, their companion, their reason to keep going. I used to hear people say prison is for bad people, but I don't think that's true. My handler is one of the best people I know. He and the others have taken care of me, loved me, and taught me everything I need to know. So maybe prison isn't just a place where people are sent away. Maybe it's also a place where people can change. My name is Delta. I am a New Life Canine Service Dog, and you know what? I'm proud of where I come from. And here is another letter to Delta's future recipient. Today I sat back and watched Delta play with the other dogs, just enjoying the moment. This weekend marks the 1-year anniversary of the New Life Canine program at our facility, and so much has changed in that time, both for Delta and for me. I put everything I have into this program, and sometimes I still ask myself, where do you stand, Chief? I've had moments of doubt, but my heart has always known the answer. Delta has taught me what it means to care for someone selflessly. He has made me a better man, and now it's time for him to move on. And here's another letter to Delta's future recipient. And this was very hard because I had just gotten some news of Delta's medical condition Delta had experienced. I write this letter with a heavy heart. This week, I received news that Delta will not be able to complete his training as a certified service dog due to a torn ACL. When I first heard the news, it felt like everything I had poured into him, my heart, my soul, had been taken from me. I had imagined myself walking him across the stage at graduation, sharing our stories, celebrating everything he had accomplished. But what I failed to realize in that moment was that Delta has always been a service dog. He saved me long before he was ever assigned to a veteran or first responder. I know he will be placed with a loving family, and though he won't fulfill the role I have envisioned, I know his purpose is far from over. That night, after I got the news, I went back to my cell and I cried. I wrestled with my emotions, selfish and unselfish alike, but in the end, I knew I had to move forward for both of us. Delta's story isn't over, and neither is mine. And here's another letter that I've written to Delta. Dear Delta, my precious boy, yesterday they told me you will be leaving in 2 weeks. I knew this day would come, but that doesn't make it any easier. I dreamed last night that you were walking out of the gates, your tail wagging with excitement, looking back at me one last time. Delta, you have given me the best year and a half of my life. You helped me find peace, love, and forgiveness in a place where none of those things can come easily. I don't know what life will bring you next, but I do know this. You will be loved, and because of you, I have learned to love myself again. Love, Dad. And here's a final letter to Delta's future recipient. It is the day before Delta is scheduled to leave me permanently. For the past 2 weeks, I have spent every waking and sleeping hour with him. holding on to these last moments together. The pain sits just beneath the surface of my heart, waiting to spill out in a stream of tears. I don't like the pain, yet it reminds me just how deeply bonded I am to this incredible creature. I know you're sitting there anticipating his arrival, just as I did when he first came into my own life. I also know that you will embrace him in ways no one else ever could except for me, because I believe it has been you specifically who has been waiting for him all this time. I've come to accept that he was meant to change both of our lives in ways far greater than human understanding alone can ever grasp. I hope that my journey with him and all that I have shared with you sheds light on just how extraordinary these animals are, especially for those of us who have been broken and in need of restoration for so long. I don't know what life has in store for me or for the other men who have walked this path as dog handlers, but I do know that none of us will ever be the same as we were 2 years ago. There will be days when life...
You have 60 seconds remaining.
When the weight of the world feels unbearable, but in those moments, I hope you look down at Delta's face and find the same peace and reassurance he has given me. He will be your unwavering companion, your anchor in the storm. Please love him with the same devotion he will unconditionally give you in return. Never forget the power of the bond you two will build, because in the end, love is all that truly matters. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Thank you for carrying forward what I began with Delta. Without this program, without the people who make it possible, I would never have been able to step into this role and find the purpose I have now. I will never forget you, the kind, loving, and worthy human being who now takes my place in Delta's life. Love him as if each day were your last. And continuing, new life. Letting these dogs see all of your vulnerabilities is the easiest part, but putting your heart and soul on display for everyone else to witness, that's another story. Spending most of my life incarcerated taught me a thing or two about vulnerability, mainly that it was something to suppress. Keeping my guard up had become second nature, a survival instinct that protected me from being hurt, used, or betrayed. So when I joined New Life Canines and was expected to tap into the very emotions I had buried for so long, it was uncomfortable to say the least. But if there's one thing people will tell you about me, it's that I believe in courage, even when it means going against what everyone else thinks. I walked away from the prison gang I had been deeply involved in for years because I had the courage to finally do so. Otherwise, I would have never cooperated with the federal agents, let alone dismantled the false ideologies I had once embraced and promoted so blindly. The dynamics of a group, a team like the New Life Canines family, brought out more goodness in me than I ever expected. Even though I had already changed the course of my life years before, I still often felt like a stranger in my own skin. But when you become part of something bigger than yourself, for something that requires you to surrender your personal expectations in service of the greater mission, you start to mold into the kind of person who belongs in the community. You learn to stand up for those who can't speak for themselves, and that doesn't just apply to the dogs you care for. Right away, I found myself in situations that called on my integrity just as much as they did my leadership among the other men in the program. Like most things in prison, not everyone who signs up for these programs does so with honest intentions. Some men still held on to the habits of their past, using drugs, engaging in yard politics, and failing to fully commit their responsibilities as dog handlers. It became clear that we had to weed out those unwilling to make the necessary changes by either urging them to correct their behavior or by asking them to walk away from the program altogether. Because at the end of the day, the way we conduct ourselves doesn't just reflect on us, it affects the dogs too. If I didn't hold these men accountable, who would? Doing the right thing in prison isn't always seen as right in the eyes of those who are still trapped in the criminal mindset. The so-called code where speaking up about wrongdoings makes you a snitch is something men live and die by in here. Even though I walked away from the gang life years ago and I now live on a yard where most men have done the same, remnants of that old world still linger. Not everyone who believes, or not everyone who leaves the gang truly leaves it behind. Some still care too much about what others think or rely on drugs to cope with their time inside. I'm proud to say that when I walked away, I meant it. I didn't half-step. I didn't hold on to old habits or relationships that kept me tethered to the life. I walked away completely. For a long time, I thought people in prison were incapable of understanding honesty and integrity. I believed those concepts didn't exist in an environment built on deception, violence, and survival. I became so jaded that I refused to give people the benefit of the doubt. But over time, I learned that goodness does exist in here. I see it in the men who have worked alongside me and those who have truly committed themselves to something bigger than their past mistakes. That doesn't mean I'm not still guarded. This program, its mission, its men, and its dogs means everything to me. I've invested my heart and soul into it, and I take my role as a leader seriously. But I also recognize that I didn't change on my own. I became the person I am today because others were willing to stand by me through my worst decisions, even when I didn't deserve it. Now I try to do the same for others. But good intentions aren't enough. This responsibility requires full commitment. Taking on the role of a dog handler means relinquishing anything harmful to yourself, to the dogs, and to the men around you. True leadership is about leading by example, and I hope that's exactly what I've done. At the start of this journey, I told our program liaison that I would carry this program on our team and our team on my back if I had to, and I meant every word of that. At the time, we were struggling. Some of the men involved weren't ready to let go of their past. There were moments when I felt like the whole thing was going to collapse because of a few bad apples. Before, I never cared about what was happening outside of my own world. If guys were using drugs or getting caught up in yard politics, that was their business. But when those things started happening within the walls of the program I had committed my life to, it became personal. If I couldn't count on the men standing beside me in this mission of saving lives through the healing power of the human-canine bond, then who could I count on? I felt defeated more times than I can count. But looking back, I'm grateful for the challenges. They forced me to show up, to prove who I really am. They allowed others to see the real me, not the man who was once hardened by...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
But the man who believes in honesty, integrity, and accountability. And through these struggles, I finally saw that those things do exist in prison. I see them in myself and in my teammates and in the transformation we've undergone together. This program demands accountability, plain and simple. You can choose to show up, to go through the motions, attend team sessions, and work with the dogs, or you can embrace the responsibility fully. I tell the guys all the time, this program is something that no one can take from you unless you let them have it. Saving lives doesn't just mean training these dogs to be service animals for veterans and first responders. It means saving our own lives, lives that were once lost in the chaos of crime, addiction, and self-destruction. For a long time, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea that my past had any relevance to the person I am now or the future I could have. But the truth is, the past does matter. It matters because it reminds us why we chose to change. It matters because it keeps us accountable. People will say that you get out what you put in, and that's exactly how I see this experience. If you're willing to invest your future to push past self-doubt, self-hatred, and regret, then there's nothing stopping you from becoming the person you're always meant to be. The hardest part for many of us isn't the work itself. It's believing that we deserve to be here, that we deserve to be a part of something so selfless and meaningful. That word deserve is heavy for men like us. We are convicted murderers, robbers, and drug dealers. We've spent years, even decades, punishing ourselves for the harms we've caused. So when the opportunity comes to do something good, to be a part of something that gives instead of takes, it's difficult to accept. But that's the real challenge. Not just training the dogs, not just showing up to team meetings. The challenge is learning to forgive yourself. My right to dream. Before my brother Dwayne and I got lost in the cycle of abuse and survival, we had dreams. Dwayne wanted to be a firefighter, even into his early 20s, and held on to that dream and enrolled in a fire academy that would let his past, the rest, define him. I could always picture him in that fireman's gear riding on the back of a truck with sirens blaring, rushing toward a burning building while everyone else ran the other way. That was who he was. He had an instinct to help people, to throw himself into danger if it meant saving someone else. I wasn't like that. As kids, we sat in our room playing with...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Playing with toy fire trucks, trying to drown out the sound of our parents screaming at each other. He always knew what he wanted to be. I don't know if I ever truly wanted to be a firefighter like Dwayne, but I did want to be something before life tried to convince us otherwise. We all did. When I finally found my footing and walked away from prison and getting the violence and the self-destruction cycle, I began to understand what was driving me to dream again, and I realized that I still had that in me. If I didn't, I wouldn't be sitting here today telling you my story. What had been missing all along was something so simple yet so powerful: encouragement. Many of us grew up without anyone standing behind us, pushing us forward or supporting our growth from the start. The only time an adult paid attention to me was after I had already done something wrong, after I had crossed the line and needed to be reprimanded for it. So is it really strange that men in here once dreamed of being firefighters, doctors, or even police officers? Not at all. The truth is, sitting in these cells are men who were all of those things before their lives took a wrong turn somewhere. And then there are men like me, men who never stood a fair chance at all. For a long time, I had trouble accepting that guys who had real careers, real opportunities could have ended up here the same as me. But eventually I came to understand that no matter what road you take in life, one bad detour can land anyone in a place like this. Lock a human being in a concrete box for 20-something hours a day, take away everything they've ever known, strip them of their identity, and destroy their hope in ways that most people could never understand. Sure, those dreams are still there, buried beneath the surface, but they start to feel like distant illusions, things that only exist in imagination. When I started this journey with Delta and the rest of the dogs in our program, I didn't believe I deserved to be a part of something bigger than myself. How could I? I had taken a life. I had destroyed a family. I had let down so many people throughout my lifetime. So what right did I have to do this? Delta became my second chance, my opportunity to make things right in the only way I knew how. I knew I could never be a firefighter. I knew I would never be a doctor. Those dreams had been left long ago. But I could be something good before my time was up, and that was enough for me. When the New Life Canines program first arrived at our prison, it wasn't met with open arms. Not everyone, staff included, was on board with the idea of giving inmates this kind of responsibility. Some of the officers were dog lovers themselves, yet it still wasn't enough. They doubted whether we could handle the responsibility of caring for these animals, and I understood that. To some extent, I got their concerns. But I had to bite my tongue more times than I can count when I overheard the comments how we didn't deserve this opportunity, how people like us shouldn't be trusted with something so precious. I like to think I've grown thick skin over the years, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't get to me. Every time I walked Delta across the yard, every time I heard the naysayers' remarks, I carried that weight. No matter what we did, they still saw us nothing more than criminals. We were trying to do something good, and still we were being judged by our past. I had to remind myself over and over that the only way to change their attitudes was to lead by example, to show them through my own actions that we were capable, that this program was making a difference. Today, my brother Dwayne is a welder, a proud member of the Ironworkers Union. He never became a firefighter, but he became everything else that makes a man a man. He raised two incredible sons, both college graduates. He married his high school sweetheart. He built a life as a pillar of his community. We talk every few days, and he tells me all the time how proud he is of me. Me, the kid he watched spiral out of control, the kid he saw it at his very worst. Now I'm finally giving him something to brag about. So many years I looked up to my big brother. Now for the first time, he gets to look up to me, too. Some people might ask, what right do we have to dream? What right does someone in prison have to envision a future? For me, that answer is simple. Anyone without a dream is without direction, without vision, without a moral compass. I may not look like your typical college student with my tattoos and my rough exterior, but I guarantee, if given the opportunity, I would surprise you. Most men in here want to do better. They want to change. But without encouragement, without the space to dream, they remain lost. Tell me I can achieve something, and I'll take that challenge head on, because that's who I am now. Before I joined the New Life Canines program, I was already working toward my bachelor's degree in psychology. My goal was to one day work with at-risk youth. I wanted to be the person I needed when I was young, the person who could step in before it was too late. Now I want to take that goal a step further. I see firsthand how powerful the human-canine bond is. I see how much these dogs help us, heal us, and change us, and I believe that they can do the same for at-risk teenagers, just as they do for veterans and first responders. If I didn't believe it was possible, would I dare dream so big? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is, this dream gets me up every day. It keeps me focused. It keeps me determined. I can actually see myself walking out of these gates one day into the arms of my family. I can see myself using everything I've learned to help others. What kind of person, after all I've done and all I've been through, dares to dream like this? I'll tell you, the kind of person who believes they have the right to dream, and I'm no different than you are. I have the right to dream. The weight we carry. Since he was a small puppy, Delta has struggled with joint...
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Call back. The weight we carry. Since he was a small puppy, Delta has struggled with joint issues. particularly in his elbows. The medical term is dysplasia, a condition that can affect both hips and elbows, making movement painful over time. I noticed early on that he would limp, especially after running off leash with the other dogs. Delta, like most dogs, is stoic. He doesn't complain, but the limp was noticeable. New Life Canines explains that larger breeds often develop this condition. They assured me it wouldn't stop him from becoming a service dog if managed properly. But I was still worried. Had I done something wrong? Was I somehow responsible for his pain? When you are trusted with a life, doubt creeps in at every turn. From the moment I first held Delta in my arms, he felt like an extension of me, like a part of my soul had taken shape in the form of this dog. The idea of him suffering was unbearable. Now, a year and a half later, he still experiences discomfort sometimes, but I'm not the overprotective handler I once was. I've learned. I've asked questions. I've studied everything I can about dysplasia. I understand now that it's not something I could have prevented, and it doesn't mean he can't live a happy, fulfilling life. At first, I saw Delta's dysplasia as a setback, but then I started thinking, would our journey really be ours if there were no obstacles to overcome? My whole life has been an uphill climb. Delta and I are a team. If we have to climb a mountain together, we will. Dysplasia happens when a dog's joints don't form properly. Genetics played a role in Delta's case. His father, Magnum, had the same condition. Other puppies from his litter have developed it too. Even with that, Delta has never let it hold him back, and neither will I. He's scheduled for more x-rays soon. The trainers think he may need minor surgery. I don't know what that means for his future as a service dog yet, but I know this. Whether he graduates from the program or not, he has already fulfilled his purpose. He saved me. That's all that matters. I don't know exactly when Delta will have surgery, but I do not know that being apart from him will not be easy. I can't remember a time when we were separated for more than a week. Every night, I've gotten used to climbing into bed with him right beside me, his head either resting on my chest or more often than not, sprawled across my pillow before I even have a chance to get comfortable myself. He always gives me that sideways glance, the one that says, sorry, bud, but I got here first. And like always, I do what I know drives him crazy. I lift his ear and gently blow into it, making him toss his head around in protest. That always turns into a few minutes of pre-bed wrestling, a ritual we both know by heart. We have so many small routines like this throughout the day, little moments I wouldn't trade for anything. When Nicole and Kate from New Life Canines told me about Delta's likely surgery, they did so with the same concern and compassion they always show. They know how much I love him. They also know what I've endured in my own life, and they're always mindful of how to deliver the news to me. To them, we handlers are just as important as the dog. Because of COVID-19 restrictions, they haven't been able to visit the prison, but seeing them on the video monitor and knowing they care enough to check in on my well-being means everything. They are family now. When his service dog graduates, the team at New Life Canines carefully selects a recipient based on several factors. I don't know everything about their boot camps, where the dogs and potential recipients spend a couple of weeks together, but I do know that matching process is about setting both up for success. Delta's history of elbow dysplasia means he can't be paired with someone who will rely on him for physical assistance, like using the brace method to push himself up. That kind of weight-bearing support would only cause him more pain, and that's not what this program is about. Saving lives through the healing power of the human-canine bond is the New Life Canines motto. It's about preparing the right dog with the right person so both can thrive. Delta will be just fine wherever he is placed. He was born to save lives, and as I've said before, he's already saved mine. And this is Delta's final walk. I would be lying if I said I wasn't afraid. The thought of Delta walking out of here has left me feeling vulnerable and exposed in many ways I never expected. For nearly 2 years, he has been by my side. As human beings, we take on many roles in life: father, friend, protector, guide, and somehow Delta became all of those things to me. He has been everything I could not be without him. Now I have to remind myself, just as Kate and Nicole did this week, that the world is getting the best part of me through him. The other handlers haven't yet experienced what I'm going to go through, but I like to think they understand. They see me, they know Delta, they recognize how difficult this is. No one says much about it, but I can feel their empathy. This is uncharted territory for all of us, and while I may not be handling this pain in the best way, the last thing I ever want is for my struggles to interfere with the growth of the program. Our biggest challenge will be filling the void of his absence, learning how to carry this grief without letting it collapse in on me. I know myself. I know how I used to deal with the loss and how I would shut down, retreat, and wall myself off from the world. The last thing I want to do is go backward. The men around me, the ones who have also bonded with their own dogs, will play a key role in keeping me from falling into that dark place. I have to be willing to let them in. I have to allow myself to grieve with them, not in isolation. Otherwise, all the growth I have achieved in this program will have been for nothing. I refuse to let that happen. For the past few weeks, I have replayed every moment we have shared, every walk, every game, every small, seemingly insignificant thing that now means everything to me. You live life building memories, forging relationships, and all the while you take for granted the in-between moments. You don't realize they're the ones that will stay with you forever. I think about the countless laps around the track with him trotting beside me, carrying his leash in his mouth like it was his responsibility to walk me. I hear the sound of his snout plunging into the gopher hole, his tail wagging as he...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
As he sniffed and searched like a detective on a case. I remember how I laughed, never stopping to think that one day this would all come to an end. But maybe that's life, one memory after another, hoping that, in the end, we leave behind something meaningful. If you look at Delta and me, you will see more than just a prisoner and his dog. Delta made me forget I was in prison. Nothing has ever felt as raw as watching him leave me for the day or for the last time. We spent our final weeks together, mostly outside, walking across the grass, soaking in each moment. I talked to him as if he were my son, preparing him for the world beyond these gates. These are the moments I know I'll cherish the most, the ones that didn't have to mean anything, but ended up meaning everything. The night before he left, I held him tighter than I had ever before, knowing it would be the last time he slept in the bed that had become just as much his as it was mine. I knew what was coming, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I could only remind myself of what he had given me. The next afternoon, I stood at the gate as Nicole and his weekend puppy raiser led him away. I wore dark sunglasses to hide the tears, but there was no hiding the heartbreak. The men in the yard watched from a distance, saying nothing, but I knew they felt it. This dog, this creature who had loved me without conditions for the past year and a half, was now walking away, and I couldn't stop him. I had promised Delta all week that I would honor our journey by continuing to do good, by continuing to be the man he helped me become. I had thought about all the ways he brought out the best to me, and I knew the last thing I would ever do was let him down. So I knelt down, hugged him, kissed him, and let him go. The woman who adopted him has been part of his life since the beginning. She isn't just a weekend puppy raiser. She is a family to him over time. I've grown to respect and admire her, not just for what she did for Delta, but for the love she has shown both of us. As she walked away with him, she told me how unfair I felt that he never got to fulfill his role as a service dog. But I reminded her of something I now fully believe. Maybe this was always how it was meant to be. Delta did fulfill his purpose. He saved my life. He changed hers and her family's life. He was exactly where he was meant to be all along. I walked back to my building, my heart feeling like it had been crushed beneath the weight of a freight train. And yet, as I stepped inside, something felt different. I felt free. Delta and I had walked out of prison together that day in a way only the two of us could ever understand. Unchained. Time seems to stand still when you are confined to a prison cell no bigger than 15 by 15 feet separated from the rest of the world. I have lost so much in my life along the way, yet I have also found more than I ever imagined, things I never thought possible after making the conscious decision to reclaim my life from the destruction and poor choices that once defined me. But it wasn't easy. As human beings, we endure so much. Many of those hardships we survive without fully understanding how or why, only to realize in the aftermath that what we do with those experiences is what truly counts. I am no exception. Despite the fact that I sit here in a California prison cell while many of you live your lives freely beyond these walls, We all make mistakes. We all hurt. But we also all have the ability to take back control of our own lives. The fact that I found my inner freedom through my journey with a dog, that my redemption came through something as simple yet as profound as this, is nothing short of extraordinary. Actual dogs were brought into a prison, placed in the care of men who had long been labeled unworthy of trust, were given the responsibility of teaching, guiding, and shaping them into life partners for those who could not function in the world without them. That in itself was something I never thought I would witness, let alone be a part of. Growing up, before all of the things that happened in my childhood, I had dreams. I wanted to be somebody, to become something in this world. I don't believe that anyone sets out in life to cause harm, to bring destruction to those around them, or to push away the people who love them. But when it happens, when we become those people, I believe the cause runs much deeper than what the surface shows. Pain changes us. Affliction warps the way we see the world. For years, I saw the world through the lens of my own suffering. I wore my wounds like armor, shutting out anything that could hurt me further. But through Delta, through the New Life Canines, I learned how to love again. I learned how to see the world through fresh eyes, to embrace self-forgiveness, to recognize that my life is bigger than my mistakes. The fact that all of this transformation was made possible through a dog, a small creature placed in this world to save lives, makes my journey all the more meaningful. Delta was sent to me for a reason, and because of him, I have found freedom, the kind that cannot be taken away. Without New Life Canines, I don't know where I would be mentally or emotionally. The opportunity to be a part of something so extraordinary will always mean the world to me, no matter what the future holds. What will I do now? The answer is simple. I will keep going. I will stay the course, remain focused on my recovery, and continue striving to be the man that I was always meant to be. Years ago, I met Dr. Nandy S. Crosby, head of the sociology department at Chico State University. She told me something that has stuck with me ever since. You are a man on a mission to contradict everything you once were. I didn't fully understand those words at the time. Now I do. Today, as I sit in the prison chapel writing these words, I realize how blessed I am to be here, to be alive, to be sharing my story, to be a living contradiction of the man I used to be. Just a few years ago, I felt unworthy of any kind of goodness. Now I am more determined than ever to actually deserve it. Physically, Delta is gone, but its presence lingers everywhere. His chewed-up teddy bear still sits on my bed, his old rawhide bone, his food bowl, the remnants of his life with me remain exactly where they have always been. Some people might think I should put his things away, but I won't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Anyone who has ever truly loved a dog or any animal will understand. In the weeks leading up to Delta's departure, I started reading a book called Soul Dogs by Elena Manis. She wrote about her desperate desire to communicate with the dog after its passing, about feeling lost without him. I picked up the book by chance, but I believe now that I was meant to read it. Like Manis, I feared losing my connection to Delta. I feared that once he was gone, I would no longer be the same. That fear was real. Even now, as I walk the yard, I see him in every spot we once explored, every patch of grass, every tree sniffed, every gopher hole he obsessed over. I want to hold on to every memory, but
You have 60 seconds remaining.
I also wish I could forget the pain of missing him. It's bittersweet. I ask myself over and over, what do I do without him? And then I remind myself, he's exactly where he's meant to be. He is living the life he deserves. And because of him, I am living mine.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
And this is the final poem that I wrote about Delta. It's titled The Best Part of Me. They call him Delta. To the world, he is a dog, a beautiful, loving, playful dog. To me, he is my son, my best friend, my freedom. Because of him, I am not the man I used to be. Because of him, I am a man worth knowing. He is and always will be the best part of me.
Wow.